We don't need Cataclysm Classic. Now, Cataclysm was surely like the beginning of the end. I actually say, maybe this is unpopular opinion, I personally love Wrath of the Lich King, one of my favorite expansions, but I think Wrath was actually the beginning of the end. Because that was the transition into modern WoW. I feel like halfway through Wrath, we started to get like the Dungeon Finder and all like the modern day shit that we have started in Wrath. But Cata was like, okay, that's the cap of the story, essentially. That was like the end of the classic stories of World of Warcraft, and that's when we got into other shit. So, let's see why we don't need Cataclysm Classic. I kind of agree with this, but let's find out. Zuggy Poo.
Wrath of the Lich King Classic is coming to an end very soon. Icecrown Citadel will open up, and Arthas will fall.
Greatest villain in World of Warcraft.
And the big
history.
question is, what is next? Now, if Classic just keeps going in the same order from the past, Cataclysm Classic would be up next. But personally, I do not think they should do Cataclysm.
Yeah, I don't
and
either.
I'm here today
It's time for Classic
to talk a
Plus
little
if
bit
they're gonna
about why I
continue
feel that way.
with
And I know
Classic.
this is a topic a lot of people will have opinions on, so feel free to write what you think down in the comments below. I like seeing other people's thoughts and opinions on the game, even if they don't align with my thoughts and opinions of the game. Now, I understand that if Cataclysm Classic is already the plan, there is no stopping it at this point. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be
the one
announced
reason
at
why they would
BlizzCon.
do a Cataclysm Plus or Cataclysm Classic is because it's the easiest thing to do, right? Like in terms of dev time and power that they need, they just, giving you Cataclysm Classic is the easiest thing to do. A Classic Plus requires like actual dev time. Like they're making content at that point. They're not just re-releasing it. So that's the reason why I would see them doing Cataclysm. But I don't know if fanfare around it wouldn't be that high. This is the end of nostalgic Azeroth, right? This is when everything changed.
Chris
Good morning,
Metzen
Helena.
isn't going to see this video and go, you know what? Hey, boys, I saw this Zuggy Poo guy's video, and it really made me think. Let's shut down the whole operation because he thinks it'll be bad. No, that's not going to happen, all right? And now I know there's a lot of people who have nostalgia for Cataclysm, me included. It was one of my favorite times playing WoW during that
Really?
expansion.
I started
But
college.
I also realized that it wasn't
I was
because
gonna start
of
college
the
during this time,
expansion
so I didn't care
itself.
that much for it.
It was just the time, and it just happened to be Cata going on at that time. And when I've spoken on not wanting Cata Classic in my past videos, I've gotten comments of people who were saying stuff like, well, they want it because it was their first expansion, and they want to re-experience it. Now, in a
It's true.
way,
I'm sure there's Cata
Cataclysm
babies
was
out
also
there.
my first expansion, too.
Cata
Now, I
Andes.
started in Wrath of the Lich King, yes, but I spent a majority of the time playing those 10-day free trial accounts because we were really poor growing up, okay?
This guy's a Wrath baby. Oh man, there are so many Wrath babies. There are. My brother-in-law, you know what he is? He's a freaking BFA baby. Yeah, those even exist. He's a BFA baby because he was silly and he didn't know about World of Warcraft till he married my sister. And of course, once he married my sister, I put my hand on his shoulder at the wedding, morning of. And I told him, listen, man, you want to be part of this family? You want to be part of my inner circle? I'm going to need you to try this game. It's called World of Warcraft. He goes, what? I just install it. It's $15 a month. Consider it a membership fee into my inner circle. You need to start playing this game if you want to be, you want to be cool with me. And he did. He did, and he never stopped. He still plays it. He loves the game. He actually talks about it all the time. And he's a fucking doctor now. He's a doctor now, and he gets, and my wife, his wife, who's my sister, gets mad at me sometimes. She's like, oh, he finally had time off from the hospital, and he wanted to play World of Warcraft. Thanks, Sam. Be like, no problem. That's a real man right there. That's a man's man. Good job.
Okay, I wasn't
Yeah, he
convincing
still
my
plays.
parents
He
to buy
loves
me
it.
a game, 2 expansions for that game, and a subscription to keep playing that game. All right, that
Yeah,
was
and
off
my
the
sister
table
hates
for
me
a
now,
long
that's true.
time. But when I finally did get a full account, I never got to max level until Cataclysm. So Cata was my first time at endgame, and now I think the argument of wanting to relive your first expansion is a bad argument because every single expansion has players who that was their first
Yep.
expansion.
Like
they
I said, my
played.
brother-in-law,
Are we going to give
BFA.
every single one of them that point to relive? And well, that brings me to my first big argument for not doing Cataclysm Classic. If Cataclysm Classic comes out, then
It's true.
when does it
It's
end?
true, Addison.
If you do Cataclysm, people are going to want Mists of Pandaria. And then after that, what are we going to do? Warlords of Draenor Classic?
Oh,
Is that
no.
really going to happen? Where does Classic end? at
Classic
that point?
garrisons.
In my opinion, Wrath of the Lich King is the stopping point for Classic. And
I
it
agree.
always should have been planned to be the stopping point from the beginning. Vanilla, Burning Crusade, and Wrath of
Yeah,
the Lich King
the original
are the
trilogy.
perfect trilogy for Classic. Classic, and they should not go any further. Once they
Agreed.
go past Wrath, there is no end in sight, and we'll eventually end up back at Dragonflight Classic. Are we really going to do that? So that's one of the main reasons I think it shouldn't happen. But let's kind of get into Cataclysm itself, you know, the systems and features that it added to the game. Now, if you ask me, Cataclysm, with all of its changes and features, doesn't fit under the category of, quote, classic. Now, if you compare Cataclysm
it was the
to
modern.
Dragonflight,
It was.
yes.
Like Wrath of the Lich King added some new systems that were like the start of modern WoW, but Cataclysm was the changeover into what is modern WoW. In terms of everything, like the world, the graphics, the systems, a lot of it was like this was the start of modern day WoW. Definitely.
They are two very different games that are miles apart, but it is also miles apart from vanilla. I think Cata was just the start of a new trilogy, being Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria, and Warlords of Draenor.
Reforging.
And
Oh
in
my
my
God, I forgot
opinion,
about
we
that.
don't need to relive them. We don't need to relive every trilogy of the game. They just do not fall under the category of classic for me. Now, the first thing Cataclysm does is change up the old world quite a bit. And the actual landscape changes they made to the world, I would argue, were not very good. They didn't necessarily change the zones as much as they just destroyed a bunch of zones.
Yeah,
And the
that's
zone that
true.
got destroyed the worst was my beautiful Orgrimmar. Now,
Look, this is the thing. Like, people talk about like a world revamp, and some, you got some classic Andes who are like, why would you want to revamp the world? The world's fine. Here's the thing. I don't want them to change the world like they did in Cataclysm. If they do a world revamp, where they update the buildings and graphics and things, you kind of bring like what is right now, like the environment up to the same level of detail as the player character, because player characters have gotten an upgrade. Like, player characters are like in 4K now compared to what they used to be, but the environment hasn't. Like, you go back to Angoro Crater, oh shit, those fucking trees are like, those are trees only a mother could love. Those are fucking some ugly trees, man. So like, going back to those zones, they look bad, but I don't want them to do what they did in Cataclysm and necessarily change the zone. I just want an up-resed version of the same zone. I don't want it changed. I want it to come back. I want Westfall to still look like Westfall. Just give me like, the wheat and the grain maybe look a little bit better. The buildings look a little bit better. The trail, looks a little bit better. Like, all of it just looks a little bit nicer, but it's still Westfall. I still want to feel like I'm in Westfall. I just don't want. I don't want them to do what they did in Cataclysm and just put tornadoes and fucking break shit and throw lava everywhere. That was a bad idea from the start, man. You can't. It's like watching somebody tear apart your childhood home, rather than just put a new slather of paint on it and upgrade it. Like, you don't care if they upgrade it, but knocking it down or ripping it apart, yeah, you're gonna have problems.
I know this is
You're gonna have
subjective,
problems.
but, old
Ashenvale looks
Orgrimmar was
horrible,
just
too,
so
yeah.
much better in my opinion, okay? I love Garrosh. He was a great war chief. Greatest part
Garrosh
of
did nothing
Cataclysm
wrong.
was having him in charge, but, he didn't have to butcher my Orgrimmar like that. And another thing that changed with the old zones was a ton of the early game quests. And I do think a lot of the questing that was changed was good. Like, for example, in Vanilla, if you're an orc, after finishing Durtar, they tell you in one quest, hey, go to the crossroads in the Barrens, okay? Just go there. But in
PvP heaven.
Cataclysm, they made it so when you get into the Barrens, you get into a small quest hub in the Barrens, you help out a little bit, and then you have to defend a caravan, slowly making your way to the crossroads with a couple steps along the way. And I do think a lot of these quests were very good, and they were more intuitive.
Yeah, these
And
are
they
like
also
modern
added
day
the quest
quests.
helper into the game, which I think is fine, because almost everybody used questing
Yeah, I mean, everyone
anyways.
used the
But
add-on
all
at this
these
point.
new quests, they're in retail WoW. So why take the old questing from vanilla out and then replace it with katas again when we already have that still in retail? And I am also somebody who really enjoys the questing in vanilla too. I think it's
That's the
better,
best part
to be
about
honest,
vanilla.
but I like going all over the place rather than just doing all the questing in one zone to its completion before moving on to the next one. I like moving back and forth between zones and having to come back when you're stronger and shit like that.
I really
They
like
also add-
back like if we're talking about the first 3 expansions, I really focused on completing all the quests in one expansion. One expansion was my major focus of completing every single quest, and that was Wrath of the Lich King. I completed every single quest from corner to corner in Northrend, and that was because I wanted the title Champion of the Frozen Waste. It is still the title I use till this day on my Death Knight, and I only play my Death Knight, so it is still my major title. I only use that title, and that was because I worked. Like, I had a mission. I was like, I will be the fucking Champion of the Frozen Waste on my Death Knight because it's such a badass title. I'm gonna go do every fucking quest there is around here. And I did. Otherwise, questing, it was enjoyable. I loved it. It's the best part about vanilla. But like I would move on to the next zone. Like once I outleveled the zone, I'd move on. I wouldn't stick around just to do the quests.
Added flying to the old world, which I personally think was bad, and I know some people like it, but
my brother
I just
says
don't
flying
really.
was the worst thing
yes,
they ever did in WoW.
There was flying added in Burning Crusade.
I can't
and
imagine
Wrath
it
of
without
the
it
Lich
now.
King, but those zones.
The world's too big to not have flying now. Maybe when they added it, it wasn't necessary at that time, but now I can't imagine the game without flying. It'd be crazy. These zones are massive now.
Zones were designed with flying in mind, where in vanilla, those zones were not designed with flying in mind. Another big thing that was added in Cataclysm was...
To his point, had they never added flying, the game design would have been in a different direction, obviously. Now the game is made with flying in mind, so that's why flying is necessary. This is true.
It's transmog. And
I like flying,
it,
but there's a lot of people who don't.
Goes against the idea of, quote, classic. To me, a big part of classic is being able to look at somebody and tell that they are a badass, that they are a raider, a good player, whatever you want to say about them, all right? You want transmog to feel special and feel cool? Well, too bad. You aren't cool. You want to be cool? Go raid. Go do the content that gets you the cool-looking gear so that you can be a badass. I also don't know if there's a lot of people who know how transmog actually worked back then, too. It wasn't like how it is now, where everything saves into a collection tab.
No, you had to actually have the item,
to everything you've ever collected. No, it wasn't like that. You actually had to have the pieces of gear that you wanted to have it in your bag when you went to the transmog dude. So if you're a guy who likes transmogging, your bank is just going to be full of junk gear because you think it looks cool and you want to keep it around. They didn't have the collections.
I remember I went to my bank and cleared a ton of shit out when they changed it over to like the new style with the catalog and everything. I had so much transmog shit in my bank just for the sake of transmogging. It was all this old gear.
Back then, they didn't save your appearances, and they didn't even have the system that Diablo has, where you could just transmog the item slot itself, and new armor you put on just keeps that transmog. But no, I will not ever argue in favor of transmog and classic. It just takes away the feel of classic. Up next, let's talk about the raiding in Cataclysm. Because, well, in my opinion, the raids are just not very good.
It's not good.
The only raid that
Especially
I enjoyed
Deathwing.
was Firelands.
Firelands was
and
fine.
Dragon Soul was the worst end of expansion raid we've ever gotten.
Agreed.
Except for maybe like Sepulchre and Shadowlands.
Oh, man.
But
Yeah,
if you're using Shadowlands as your argument, like...
Sepulchre is what it was. It was the most difficult raid ever put in the game. I will not say it's a bad raid. I will say it was overly difficult. Now, if you go in, it's been nerfed into the ground, so it's not as bad anymore. But, like, aesthetically, it was cool. Boss fight-wise, it was cool. Like, story-wise, it was fine. The Jailer, you know, he is what he is. I made a whole video remaking the Jailer because his story kind of sucked. But the worst thing about Cataclysm is you're excited to fight Deathwing, right? Like, you are doing the entire expansion. He is on the box. He is in the cinematic. You're like, we're going to fight Deathwing. And then you get to the final fight, and what are you doing? First of all, you're on his back. That part wasn't bad. That was kind of cool, ripping the armor off and shit. But then you got Thrall, that, you know, this is the pussified Thrall, not the cool Thrall, shooting his beam of dream magic at the dragon. Okay, he falls into a thing, a whirlpool, and you're like, all right, now it's time. We're going to fight Deathwing. What ends up happening? You enter some kind of fucking hentai fight where you're fighting tentacles the entire time, and you're jumping from platform to platform. It was a very anticlimactic, shitty fight, and at the end, you felt like you never really fought Deathwing. Instead, you fought like one of his penises over and over while Thrall did the real shit. Yeah, it was anticlimactic and shitty in terms of story and raid mechanic-wise.
We lost the argument already. With Dragon Soul, it was just full of reused assets, and the only thing cool about it was being able to be in the Maelstrom at like the middle of Azeroth. That was like a pretty cool place
visiting
to
the Maelstrom was cool.
But I thought the Deathwing
that
fights were bad. Like, it's a real shame that Dragonflight has a better Deathwing raid boss fight
100%.
than the expansion that was about Deathwing.
I love tanking this fight.
You know, me and my friends, we did really enjoy going into LFR back in the day and purposely standing on the wrong sides during the Spine of Deathwing fight to make him roll and kill a bunch of people. It was fun to troll people, but you know, hold up. What did I just say there? Yeah, LFR. All right, LFR was added during Cataclysm in the last patch, and I stand with my opinion that LFR was a bad idea to add to the game, and it also goes against everything that is classic.
Can I just say one thing about LFR? I don't like LFR is what it is, but can I say that I was part of the target audience when LFR came out? Okay, because I was like one of those original WoW players who had been playing and was young enough to have time to play all the time. When Cataclysm came out, I had started undergrad. And I started having to study and do all. I was getting like a bioengineering degree, so I had to like study a lot, and I was doing all this shit, and I didn't have as much time to play anymore. But I still wanted to see the raids. So what happened? LFR came out, and I was like, oh shit, I can go see the raids. Like, I can experience the raid content, even though I don't have as much time to play the game anymore. And that's honestly why LFR, I think, came out. It's like a lot of the player base was like me. We had aged into a point in our lives where we didn't have as much time to play anymore. So LFR was introduced as like, hey, we have this cool content in the game that you as a player who doesn't play as much will never get to see unless we create LFR. So you can just group up with all these people. And you're not experiencing it really in the way it was intended to be experienced, but at least you get to go see it. And that was why I enjoyed LFR. I was so happy when they added it into the game at the time. And like, people will hate on LFR all the time now. I just say, you know what, if it's not for you, don't do it. Don't do it. Most of the time now, I'm so geared by the time the next patch or expansion comes out that I skip LFR altogether because I've already outgeared it by the time it comes out. So it doesn't bother me. It's just part of the game. It's there for the people who need it. And that's why I'm okay with it.
Sick. But let's forget about the baby mode difficulty for a second, because that doesn't even come in until the end.
Right, most people who play LFR haven't done it in years.
Raids in Cataclysm were harder than anything before it, and by a long shot, too. In my opinion, part of what makes Classic so much fun and added to its success was more simple raid mechanics. And that just gets completely thrown away in Cataclysm, all right? We already saw the number of people raiding in Classic drop when Ulduar came out in Wrath Classic. Why? Well, because Ulduar was harder than anything that came before it.
Ulduar is still a bitch. I won't do it in time walking. You guys know that. I've tried it on this stream. I will not do Ulduar in time walking because it is still too fucking hard. People just don't get how to do the tank boss, and I don't want to deal with it.
Goes into Cataclysm, which makes raiding way harder. I guarantee raiding numbers are going to be at an all-time low for Classic. And finally, let's talk about the worst thing that was added in Cataclysm. Yeah, that's right, the Worgans. This is when furries decided to come in and just ruin our game, and Blizzard let them. Nah, I'm just kidding, actually. Now, I still don't really like the Worgen race, but if you do, I don't care. But they also added the best race, you know, the goblins, okay? And I've played a goblin on my...
I mean, there's a difference between a real tail and a butt plug tail. I'll just leave it at that.
My main character ever since the day Cataclysm came out. And I still don't want Cataclysm Classic. Now, if they decide to give us Classic Plus, I really want to be able to play one of those ugly-ass vanilla goblins that are always around the towns. Now, another system that was added in Cataclysm that a lot of...
Yeah, I think Classic Plus, that's one thing they should try to do, is introduce, like, you know, Death Knights maybe, or goblins and Worgans again, but like in a classic sense or in a classic context. And like I've talked about this, I think Classic Plus could be a prequel instead of a sequel. I'll have that video up. You guys could watch it after this one. But that was where I wanted to go, because I wanted to somehow bring Death Knights into the game too. And I thought that if we go back a little bit and maybe explore the Scourge and shit, we can bring Death Knights in without going on to Wrath of the Lich King. Right? So there is content from the expansions that can be brought into Classic, but in a new way through Classic Plus. That's why I think they should just do that instead of going forward. But it's a matter of, do they have the dev time and power to do it?
People like is the reforging system. This system, you were able to take your gear, and if there was a stat that wasn't too good for you, you were able to change that stat to something that was good for you. But this does have a downside, okay? I'm gonna say it, because imagine you're in a raid or a dungeon or something, and something drops that is best of slot for you. It's got the best stats for you already, but hey, somebody else who it isn't best for is gonna roll on that item now, because they could just reforge that stat that isn't so good for them, making it now best in slot for them too. So that is going to be frustrating. There was tons of other things added in Cataclysm, but I'm not here to go over every single change and addition during the expansion, okay? I just wanted to talk about the major ones that I think break what Classic is supposed to be. And that was my main argument here in this video. Cataclysm is not what Classic is supposed to be. It takes away a lot of what the game used to be.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be that popular if they do Cataclysm Classic.
In the first place, we wanted what the game used to be.
Maybe we'll try it and then they'll stop.
And I think it would just be way more worth it to not have a team of people working on Cataclysm and just have a team of people working on something like Classic Plus. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about Classic Plus in this video because that's just not what this video is about today. But do I think Cataclysm Classic is a possibility? Yes, of course. Mostly because they have microtransactions in it, and Blizzard probably doesn't want to get rid of a game that has a bunch of microtransactions. But hey.
There's just that. But it's also it's one of the easier things to do. It's just a re-release of content. And you got to remember, too, as the classics advance, like the hardest classic for them to make was vanilla, because they had to rework some shit to get that stuff back up and working again. But the further down the line they go with the classics, the easier it is to re-release it because it's more modern. It's not as hard to, like, prepare it for modern day servers and stuff like that.
If private servers are any tell, there's tons of private servers that still go on Wrath of the Lich King nonstop. So they could keep Wrath of the Lich King Classic going forever, all right? Just keep that one up. Don't move into Cataclysm. I don't think there's nearly as many Cataclysm private servers going as there is Wrath, so why not just keep it on a version of the game that people like? And of course, my other main argument that, well, if Cataclysm Classic comes out, truly, when does Classic end? They're just going to keep it going
Gotta
forever,
do WoD Classic.
You
gotta do it.
Should happen. Anyways, though, I would love to know the thoughts of everyone down in the comments below, even if you completely disagree and somehow think Cataclysm Classic would be a good thing, all right? I know I'm going to be sitting there with anxiety and on the edge of my seat during BlizzCon for every Warcraft announcement, hoping that it isn't Cataclysm. Anyways, though, BlizzCon is only a month away, so I guess we're going to find out pretty soon. And for now, we just get another month of speculating what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think they'll announce something
and you don't know what else to comment, drop a zug down there, and I'll know you made it to the end of the video. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.
Pretty good, yeah. I definitely think Classic Plus is the way to go, and I even think Classic Plus as a prequel is the real way to go. And that's why you want to watch that video. I made a whole entire argument about why they should do that and explore the story of Arthas Menethil and the Wrath of the Lich King and all that, but in a prequel sense, right? Because all that stuff happened before vanilla. In the story timeline, that all happened before vanilla. Arthas became the Lich King before vanilla. So that's why, I want to go back and see that shit in MMO context. That's why I think it's the right way to do it. It's the right way to go. Great video.